have to wait till after his primary in August before we try to reconvene and see if that having that behind him gives him a little more flexibility with which to negotiate. But at this point, we're not anywhere close to a special session, and we're not making any progress toward one. So I'll be glad to respond to questions.
Governor, why have a special session when it's getting this late? Why have one at all?
Well, because there are projects that are ready to go, and the bonding projects that are ready to go, shovel ready, they say, and there's still enough of the construction season remaining. Although you're right, as the longer it goes, the less that applies. And the tax bill, which could be retroactive to July 1st if it passes after that, which it will, has important tax provisions for hundreds of thousands of Minnesotans. So there are important reasons to do it. That's why it's very distressing to me that the politics of this election year seem to take precedence over the best interests of Minnesotans. When I traveled around the state, as I did 2 weeks ago, everywhere people were stressing the importance of getting the measure, the local government aid, county program aid that's in the tax bill, as well as tax relief for farmers who've been hard hit with low commodity prices and yet have land values that make those payments even more onerous. And then, of course, all the projects, especially in higher education, university, and the Minnesota campuses. There's so many important reasons to proceed and get these two bills passed. It's very disappointing to me that there's not a mutual interest in achieving that.
And the preemption part, have you thought about that a little more? The business community would like to see preemption in the bill. Have you thought about that, your views on reflection?
Well, I think it's something that should be carefully considered and can't be given that kind of careful consideration in a special session. Special session is about things that have already been debated and deliberated, and I've added a few projects, but those are projects that were on the list that both committees considered. So to go into something as controversial as either the preemption or on the tax credit for private schools, those are just issues appropriate for the next legislative session, 5 months to deliberate them and take testimony and the like, but it's not, they're not going to be reasonably accomplished in the one-day special session.
Why hold a vote for potentially an August special session? Why not just say it's not going to happen? It was one of my colleagues called it a zombie session. It just won't die. Why not kill it?
Well, because I want to hold it. I want it to happen. I want the beneficiaries of these projects, as I said, the taxpayers who will see real tax reductions, and the people who will build these various buildings and be employed doing so, and then will be the beneficiaries of those facilities. I mean, those are all thousands and thousands of Minnesotans who will benefit enormously from a special session. And that's why it's just, to me, a shame that the politics of this year are taking precedent over the policies of this year.
Anything else?
A little more on Croatia. Would you tell us why you're going? It, for us, anyway, seemed to come out of nowhere.
20 years ago, one of my predecessors would have been, I guess, Governor Carlson, and the Minnesota National Guard established this relationship with the Army of Croatia, and I guess it was part of a number of states setting up these kinds of strategic relationships with the governments in other Eastern European countries. So this has been going on for 20 years, and now it's the 20th anniversary. The president of Croatia came to Minnesota earlier this year, and I hosted her for a luncheon at the residence, and very impressed with her, and she invited me personally to come to Croatia, and General Nash strongly encouraged me to go. So it's important, I think, that I represent Minnesota and participate in what are basically ceremonial events, although one I'm looking forward to is the Serve the Troops St. Paul contingent, who's done such wonderful work serving great meals to our troops in Kuwait, right next to Iraq, and Camp Shelby in Mississippi before the Red Bull contingent was sent over to Iraq, the Kuwait area. And once I went to one in Wisconsin too. So those are fun, very special. And in fact, I was not present when they served one in Norway. I flew over one day to Norway for another one of these events. Just landed because there was somebody's funeral, a law enforcement officer's funeral, so I had to cut the trip short and then returned to the National Governors Association. And so I went all the way over to Norway and had one dinner there. And as we were working our way through almost raw reindeer, I asked my host, the general, I said, well, how did your troops like the steaks that they brought over from St. Paul and cooked for them? Well, beer at that point was $20 a bottle in Norway. So he said, well, they like the steaks, but they really love the beer.
I have one more.
Yeah.
Would you comment on the Supreme Court decision yesterday on abortion, in particular also related to many attempts by Republicans here at the legislature to enact further restrictions related to abortion?
Well, the Supreme Court made a definitive declaration in Roe v. Wade, which is now over 40 years old, that women have a right to a legal abortion until the third trimester, and during the third trimester under certain circumstances. And the Texas law would have preempted that and outlawed most, if not all, abortions in Texas. And I'm very, very glad the Supreme Court made the ruling that it did. When you look at the split, the 4-4 split on a couple other very significant matters in the last few weeks, the fact that this one did get a majority of justices, I think, is very significant.
But there are other things happening here at the legislature, including efforts not just to restrict clinics, but fetal tissue research based on the debunked videos from the anti-Planned Parenthood videos. So there are more efforts continuing here.
And I expect they probably will continue. And, people have a right to bring to the legislature their point of view and propose legislation that would accomplish their views. Fortunately, none of that has passed yet. I vetoed a couple of measures back in 2011, 2012 that did reach my desk that would have restricted the rights of women in Minnesota to choose their own destinies. And I will continue to do so.
Anything else?
Okay, happy 4th, everybody.